Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and in today's video let's have a look into the cruise and the descent preparation in the iniBuilds A320. Now, the tutorial series will be kept easy so that it can be accessible to beginners as well. We are about to reach our cruising level, as we can see on the primary flight display. Now, as soon as we reach level 340, we will see altitude star showing over here, which indicates that the aircraft is now capturing the altitude that has been selected over here. Once the altitude is captured, we get alt cruise indicated here, which indicates that we have reached our cruising altitude. During the cruise, there is not all that much to do for the pilots. Basically, all we need to do is to have a look through all the ecam pages from time to time, which can easily be done using the all button down here. So when you press that, it opens one page after the other with every time you press the button. Basically, we just go over the different pages and verify that all the numbers we see are normal and that the airplane is behaving the way we expect it to behave. Now, which numbers are normal is basically something that you just need to get a grip of as you fly the airplane. So basically, whenever you are doing those checks, you will slowly remember all the numbers that you regularly see on here, and it will come to your notice if anything out of the ordinary happens. When you're done checking the last display, so when the flight control page shows, you can simply close it by clicking on the flight control key, and that's it. Another thing that we need to constantly do is to check our fuel. Now, fuel checks need to be done once an hour at the minimum, better once every 30 minutes. So, right now we're overflying the waypoint called Airbus. Let's have a look into our flight plan and see if we can find that waypoint. And you can see that here it is. So, at Airbus we should have 2,600 kilograms of fuel in our tanks. So looking over here, we currently have 2,900 kilograms. Therefore, you can see we saved 300 kilograms of fuel. The final content of the fuel check is to compare the fuel used. So 1,270 kilograms down here with the fuel on board, 2,900. And if we add the two, then we end up basically at the fuel that we had when we departed. So we basically 2,900 plus 2,170 makes roughly 4,200, and that is the amount of fuel that we had uploaded at the gate. Therefore, our fuel check is looking good and our airplane is performing as expected. Now, we are slowly approaching our top of descent already, that you can see on the navigation display down here by the arrow pointing downwards. More or less, when you're about 80 nautical miles from the top of descent, you should start the descent preparation. Now, descent preparation in the Airbus is pretty easy. We start on the plan page and selecting the constraints and a lower range, such as for example 20, and we start by checking our flight plan page to make sure that everything is looking in order. So basically we're scrolling through this once more to find if there is anything that would be out of the ordinary, anything that would concern us basically. And you can see there isn't. The missed approach is also in here, straight ahead 3.2 DME Cologne Bonn, which is that one over here, or 2,000 feet, whichever is later, and then we make a right hand turn towards Whiskey Yankee Papa VOR, climbing 5,000 feet, and as you can see that is all down here. Now, from there we move on to the radio navigation page. Now, basically we can use two VORs here, as you can see from our missed approach routing, KBO and Whiskey Yankee Papa. So let's go ahead and tune those. So we go to the radio nav page, we enter KBO, not FBO, but KBO, put that onto here, onto VOR1, you can see that automatically tunes the VOR, and then we put Whiskey Yankee Papa on the right, which automatically tunes the VOR as well. Moving up to the progress page, we can enter our landing runway in here, so Echo Delta Delta Kilo 24, and you can see that this basically provides us with the direct distance to this particular runway. And that is basically a good indication for us in case we get radar vectors from air traffic control. So like that we could cross-check our direct distance, so the shortest possible distance we might get to fly in order to determine the altitude that we should be at. Now, moving on from the progress page, we go to the performance page. On the cruise page, we check that the cabin rate of descent shows an ordinary good rate of descent. Minus 350 is very good, but we could adjust this number as required. Then we go on to next page, which leads us to the descent page. Over here we can see our managed speed target. So this is the target speed at which the Airbus wants to descend. We can modify this as needed, but today the default is looking very good, so we are simply going to keep it at the default number. Clicking next phase once again, we get to the approach page, and over here we are going to enter the weather conditions of our arrival airport. Now, for those we can go to the dashboard in the electronic flight bag again and press the update button so that it is going to download the latest weather data of our destination. So we've got a wind of 170 at 9, 10 kilometers visibility, few clouds and 4500, 16 degrees, QNH 1008. Now let's go ahead and pre-select the QNH. The way we do this is we go back to local QNH, dial in our landing QNH, and then go back to standard by pulling the button back out again. And when you do it quickly enough, the airplane is not going to start a climb as well. Same on the standby instrument, 1008 is pre-selected, and back to the standard indication. Now let's go ahead and fill the weather information into our FMS. We start with the QNH, which is 1008, and that goes up in the top over here. So QNH 1008, enter. Then we've got the temperature, which is 16 degrees, and we can enter that into the temperature field over here, and the wind is 170 at 9. So let's go ahead and enter 170 at 9. We verify that the transition altitude is correct, which it is going to be by default, and then we enter the minimum. Now, if you intend to conduct an automatic landing, use the radio minimum. If you intend to conduct a manual landing, use the barometric minimum. We're going to use barometric today, and it is going to be 550 feet for landing runway 24 in Cologne. Finally, we can decide on the flap setting. We've got to choose between configuration 3 and configuration full. The normal landing configuration used on the A320 is configuration 3, with configuration full basically being used on short runways or when a quick stopping is required. We are at a very light weight today. That means that config 3 would be available for us for the landing. However, runway 24 is 2,400 meter long, and we not necessarily want to roll all the way to the end, but we might want to vacate a little bit earlier. Therefore, let's use configuration full so that we get the minimal landing distance. Now that we've decided on our landing strategy, we can also go to the auto brake and pre-select the auto brake setting. An easy way to calculate which auto brake you need is to take the gross weight and multiply it times 2 in order to get the stopping distance with auto brake medium. So we are more or less looking at 60 times 2, so 1,200 meters. Or multiplied by 3 if you are calculating for auto brakes low. So 60 times 3, 1,800 meters. Today we are going to decide to use auto brake low so that we can vacate on the first possible exit of the runway, which should be about 1,700 meters down the runway. But auto brake medium is always available if you want to use it. Now that this is decided, let's go on to next phase one more time, and we're going to enter the engine out acceleration altitude. This is basically the minimum safe altitude at your destination, and that is 3,800 feet around Cologne. Next up we move down to the fuel prediction, where we check once again how much extra fuel we have. So we have 1,000 kilograms extra, which equals 13 minutes of flight time. And finally we go to the secondary flight plan and click copy active one more time, so that a backup of our flight plan is created in case we need to restore it after we broke something, if we decide to play with the avionics again. Now this basically concludes our approach setup. I want to show you one more thing that can be very useful, and that is the direct to function. So let's just take a quick shortcut over here by proceeding direct to the waypoint Runa. Now the way you do this is you go onto the direct page, select the waypoint, and now all you got to do is select the direct to function up here. So press that button, and now the airplane is going to fly direct towards the waypoint Runa. So that's about as easy as the descent preparation gets. In order to start the descent, all you need to do is to dial down your altitude. So let's say, for example, that we want to descend to flight level 100 initially. And then, when you are close to the top of descent, simply push in the altitude button. The Airbus A320 is not going to start the descent automatically. If you are used to flying Boeing aircraft, when you overfly the top of descent with a lower altitude set, the Boeing would automatically start to descend. The Airbus is not going to do that. In the Airbus, you dial it in, and when you're a couple miles from the top of descent, like now, 2 miles from it, you simply press the altitude button in, and that is going to start the descent, as you can see in here. So descent mode is now enunciated. And that's about as easy as it gets. The aircraft is now going to descend at 1000 feet a minute until it intercepts the vertical profile that it has previously calculated. So that should happen any moment now, so let's just wait for it to happen. Here you can see this is the actual top of descent. The vertical profile starts running in, and the airplane is now pitching down in order to follow this vertical profile. When you are on the descent, you can easily monitor the vertical progress by looking at the progress page down here. In here you see you now got the vertical deviation indication, and this tells you whether or where your airplane is located in relation to the calculated vertical profile. For example, now it's showing +0, in other words we are basically exactly on the vertical profile. However, if you have a larger deviation when the dot runs out of the scale of the altimeter, then you would have easy access to the vertical deviation over here on the progress page of your FMS. Now, in the real world, when there is a large deviation, you will also see a number shown next to the green dot. However, this feature is, as far as I'm aware, currently not simulated in any of the Airbuses that we have available for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now this basically concludes this tutorial on the cruise, the descent preparation, and now the initiation of the descent. I would like to thank you very much for watching, hope that you found this one interesting, and as always, if you're up for more, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and finally, if you really love what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link that you can find in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and see you all again on the next one.